Tonight, I can announce the United States has worked with 30 other countries to release 60 million barrels of oil from reserves around the world. America will lead that effort, releasing 30 million barrels of our own strategic petroleum reserve. And we stand ready to do more if necessary, united with our allies.
Really a subdued applause there, even from the Vice President and Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, who were seated right behind the President as he delivered his 62-minute State of the Union address. We should say the shortest State of the Union since 2002, George W. Bush. So it's been 20 years since we've seen one that short. Oil prices hit $111 a barrel yesterday. We haven't seen that since Barack Obama was president and Joe Biden was vice president. I half expected a course correction. I was optimistic, but I expected the president to say, we've announced we are reopening the Keystone Pipeline. America will be energy independent once again. And then you would really see a round of applause. Sadly, we did not get that moment last night. All right, we're also entering day number 7 of the war in Ukraine. We should say President Zelensky is alive today. Despite assassination attempts, he remains the biggest target in Ukraine. All right, President Biden announcing the release of 60 million barrels from the worldwide oil reserves last night during his State of the Union. For more, I want to welcome in Kansas Senator Roger Marshall. Senator, great to have you back on this morning. By the way, the Keystone Pipeline, I believe that runs right through the heart of your home state, the state of Kansas. So it would have huge implications for the people of Kansas. Just wondering what you made of the president's speech last night and his what he did with the oil reserves. Does that go far enough, or is that just putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound?
No, Rob, he's spitting in the wind. The amount of oil he's talking about is enough for America for about 3.5 days. Look, why did this president throw out American energy independence? It's important from a national security reason, like we're seeing play out in Ukraine and Russia, as well as it plays to inflation right now. This is the #1 issue the president could address simply today. He could sign an executive order to embargo Russian oil. We're importing more oil from Russia than we are from Alaska, almost 1 million barrels a day. We are funding this war. You saw, I think you just mentioned it hit $111 a barrel last night during his speech as well. So we are funding this war over there, and we are driving up inflation by not allowing energy independence.
Yeah, I mean, oil should be, right around $60 a barrel. That was right around where it was when during the Trump years. During the Obama years, April 2011, $142 a barrel. When Obama first took office, $179 a barrel. We could go beyond that, given where we are right now. I know you've introduced a bill that would ban Russian oil imports here in the United States, saying that the U.S. needs to quit funding Putin's war on Ukraine, which is exactly what we're doing. Senator, if we did this, what would that mean for Russia?
Well, it would stop their funding. So I think about half their economy is related to oil. And if we could get the other nations to join us as well, we would really shut them down economically. Remember, Russia's only the 12th largest economy in the world. It's a smaller economy than Italy. It's smaller than Texas. It's smaller than California. How is Putin going to keep funding this war if he doesn't have that income? He's very, very much dependent upon energy for their GDP. So we could really give them a sting and shorten the length of this war.
Senator, Kamala Harris called into a talk radio show yesterday to talk about the dynamic between Russia and Ukraine. Take a listen, and then we'll get some reaction.
So Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically, that's wrong.
Senator, I'm not trying to be funny. I've got a 5-year-old daughter who gave me a very similar analysis yesterday. If this does get worse, if Putin makes his way through Kyiv and continues west to Poland or a NATO country, are Joe Biden and Kamala Harris really the right people to manage us through what could be World War III?
Well, Rob, I'm as concerned as you all are. And I just want to take this one step further that no one's talking about. The impact of this war back home, we've talked about the gas prices, but it's going to make grocery prices go up as well. Ukraine is a very rich, fertile country. They export about 10 to 15% of the world's supply of corn and wheat. So if China's unable to buy any corn and wheat from Ukraine, guess what? They're going to come to this nation, to America, and drive up the prices here. In the next 3 or 4 weeks, Ukraine should be planting corn. And that's not going to happen right now because they're using all their fuel for the war process. So I'm very concerned that this White House is not anticipating all these other challenges. Again, they could stop this war in its tracks by stopping importing Russian oil.
You make such a good point. Ukraine is really the breadbasket for all of Europe and a lot of Russia and a lot of the rest of the world. It's prairie country, just like Kansas is, your home state, in the Midwest. Just a quick question about the State of the Union yesterday. 2 Democrats gave their response to the president's speech. Now, we're used to that with the opposing party. A Republican gives a response. Last night, it was Kim Reynolds, the governor of Iowa. What did you make of 2 Democrats also speaking last night? How unusual?
Well, I think that the Democrats would agree with me that the president did not describe the State of the Union. We've done over 90 town halls back in Kansas, and the State of the Union that's being described by my listeners, by my folks at those town halls, is not what the president talked about last night. Your listeners are smarter than that, Rob. I think if we all asked ourselves, is our family safer today than it was a year ago? Is the world safer than it was a year ago? And how's my kids' education going? Is my paycheck going further or not? You and I know the answer to that because we listen to those folks around us and to our listeners as well. So I'm not surprised at all that 2 Democrats wanted to respond. They want to drive Joe Biden even further to the left.
Great point, Senator. I think Ronald Reagan said something like that when he beat Jimmy Carter in 1980. Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And the American people spoke loudly in 1980 and 1984. Great having you on again, Senator Roger Marshall, great state of Kansas. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.